Tatsaviturvaraniyam Bhargo devasya dhimahi Dhiyo yo nah prachodhayatum. May that infinite light, which is in all, become manifest in all. May it be manifest in your heart and in your life. I would like to read an interesting passage here from Conversations with Yogananda. My Guru said to me, there was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna's who was so deep spiritually that Ramakrishna would say of him, he was born and I was born, raising thereby the question, who came because of whom? This young devotee once told his Guru that he'd been meditating with a woman devotee and was helping her. Sadhu, beware, warned the master. Oh, I will be all right, said the young man, who knew nothing of the delusive magnetism that exists between the sexes. Well, delusion caught him. A little bad karma came out and he went to her and abandoning his dedicated life. Even saints, you see, can fall until they reach Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Never tell yourself you are safe from temptation until you have reached the highest state. What I always say, based on his teachings, is have a healthy respect for Maya, for delusion. Don't ever think that you are free from anything until you are free from ego, because the ways in which the ego can get involved are endless. And I'm well aware that most of the people who are watching me on this show are not renunciates, but I do want to say that always keep yourself somewhat inwardly involved. God is not centered in your mate. You should see him reflected in your mate. That's another thing. But you should always reserve the first place in your heart for him. Otherwise, to put it bluntly, it's idol worship. People who worship a woman or a man in the sense of loving him particularly and forgetting God, that's idol worship. People who worship money and big bank accounts, it's idol worship. Don't think that idol worship is just images. In fact, the images in Hinduism are not idol worship as long as people see them, as they are taught to do, as images or reminders, you might say, of God. And in fact, when people look at God in that image, sometimes that image comes to life for their sake. But remember that even if in vision, my Guru said it this way, even if in vision you see the Divine Mother, look deeply into her eyes and you will see the consciousness of infinity. She is not that form. Krishna is not just that form. No image of God is just that form. The beautiful thing about Hinduism is this, that they see, or are taught to see, not everybody is pure enough in heart to understand, but they are taught to see God manifested in all things, rather than refuse to accept that God is manifested anywhere. It's very difficult to meditate and love an abstraction. And if you can't think of God as having any form at all, then it's very difficult to love that. When I first began seeking God as the Divine Mother, I had to remember a very motherly woman that I knew. Her husband was my godparent, as they say in Christianity, my godfather, because he was nominally at least supposed to look after my spiritual education. My own mother did much more of that. But the fact is that you need a form of some kind, and before long I could not think of any form. And we can't, even when I tried to meditate on my Guru in the early year or two that I was with him, it was very difficult for me to not, when I tried to think of my Guru, not see my father as a visualization. Although my father was not enlightened, still I had had that upbringing which naturally looked to him as my authority in things. Well, If you don't, as I say, if you don't want to think of anything as expressive of God, how are you going to think of Him? In truth, even my Guru said, meditate on my poem Samadhi, which gives you an actual visualization. It's just an infinite one. All the galaxies, all the stars, all the planets whirling through space. It's hard to be personal with that visualization. But I challenge you to try to visualize Him and not at all and still love Him. We need something that's going to stir our hearts. And how can you love nothing, which is what God seems to be, in the sense that He is no thing. He is nirakara. And the more you go on the path, the more you stop thinking of God as Divine Mother or any form. And you see, first of all, in nature, and you see it in everything, and you feel it there. But that power of delusion will always be there as long as you have an ego. And you don't know how many lifetimes you've gone through. You may feel that, well, I have no desires, and then suddenly, like a friend of mine, a brother disciple, he was with the Guru many years, but he always had this desire to be known as a scientist. And somebody once said, well, if you had taken up science, you'd have been a great scientist. That silly little bit of advice was enough to take him off the path. He suddenly got these images of, oh, I could be a great scientist. Well, he never became that, because he had rejected God, in a sense, in leaving his Guru. God wasn't going to give him that alternative then. Usually it doesn't come. Sometimes it does. But the fact is that all sorts of things are there. Have a healthy respect. I remember that when I was seeking desperately and thinking, well, what do I want? And I realized I wanted God. And then, as I developed this desire, I became very frightened of the power of Maya, because I saw the worst sinner. And I thought, if I had been through just the right set of circumstances that produced him, I could be like that. There's no one that you could not have been like, and there's no level to which you could not sink if you left God at any point until you reach that stage where you realize that you have no ego. You are in nirvikalpa samadhi, and you realize that He alone is acting through you. But until then, don't think that anything else, desire for anything else, attachment to anything else, don't think that it is not anything but idol worship. Westerners pride themselves on not being idol worshippers. They don't know what they're talking about. They worship the idol of money. They worship the idol of sex. They worship the idol of all kinds of things, that beautiful home in the suburbs, etc., etc. We need to develop that kind of freedom, and you can only do it by keeping yourself a little bit apart. You know, my master told me a story of when he was a young man, but he was meditating a lot. He hadn't met his Guru yet. And a friend of his said that, I used to think that when I married, I would still have my friends and we would all be the same. But I realized after I married that I began to lose touch with them. And I came to understand that my desire for friends had really been a desire for a companion of the opposite sex. And Master said, when he said that to me, I said, thank you very much. You have taught me a lesson. Well, he said that to me because he wanted me to understand that too. And it takes a long time to uproot that. You can say, I don't have it, but do you? Face yourself as you are. I've always tried to be completely honest with myself. And I have to say that I reached the point finally where a desire for a companion was no longer there, but there was that for a long time. It's human nature. Now I don't understand why people like it. Well, I do if I put myself in their shoes, but it seems like such a silly thing. When the love you're looking for is not bound in a person who can, no matter how closely people embrace, they still are two separate bodies held in by this cocoon of a body. You can't merge. You can try to, but it's not merging. You can only merge spiritually. And that spiritual merging can only be in God. But you know, there was a very interesting thing. My guru never talked about soulmates because he wanted us to understand that God was our true soulmate. But yet the thought lingers in the mind that after all, he created everything dual. Isn't it quite possible that he brought the soul in a dual form also? But that doesn't mean that you can find your soulmate on every street corner. There was a saying when he was writing the interpretations of the New Testament of the sayings of Jesus Christ, and there was a point there where it became apposite to discuss soulmates. It's the only time I ever knew him to do so. But he said that before you can reach that state of oneness, you must find your soulmate. He or she may be on another planet. And it cannot be a sexual union. It's got to be a spiritual union. But there must be that unity here before you can both merge into the infinite. I've often wondered, Sri Yukteswar and he were very different types, but you know, my guru's true guru was Babaji. It was Babaji who sent him to Sri Yukteswar. And in that chapter, The Resurrection of Sri Yukteswar, in Autobiography of a Yogi, Sri Yukteswar describes he says, when our two half-souls merge in the infinite. And it's made me wonder, because so many things he said were just a hint of something infinite, something much, much more. I've often wondered whether that simple phrase didn't have this kind of significance. They were completely opposite types, but after all, soulmates have to be a complement to one another, not just a copy of one another. I'm going into deep waters where I could drown easily because I don't really know what I'm talking about. And I'm making it quite frank that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm giving you hints of what I've meditated on, and I think this is possible, but I can't give it as a teaching. I can't say I've discovered this, I've realized this, my guru taught me this. No, but I do say that he said that, and does it mean this? I say this to you because probably you still have that, most people do, that desire. It's okay, but remember always, and this is what my guru said, you can only find that level of union when you have learned to commune with God, when there is no sense of ego, because soulmate means soulmate, not ego-mate. It's on a much different level. The union that you can have with another person, there are many levels of that union. And it is right and usual and perfectly okay to go gradually through physical love and mental sharing and communion, but strive always for that level of spiritual communion with one another, where no matter where you are. Remember when I was studying with my singing teacher, she was an old woman. She was 75 or something like that. And I went through the usual broken heart of an adolescent, and I was sort of down, and she said, "What's the matter?" And I told her, and she said, puppy love." I didn't like that expression at all. Then she said, "When my husband died, he didn't die. He's with me always." Well, that kind of love I can respect and I can honor. That is what I urge you to try to develop with your husband or wife. Try to see each other not on the level of agreeing on everything. How boring it would be if everybody in the world were a streetcar conductor, or if one in the world agreed with everything. I think it's quite nice that some of my friends don't agree with me on many things. I encourage them to just be themselves. That's the only honest friendship there can be. But we do have the same basic interest, seeking God and seeking him through one guru. But I used to say that my best friend in India was a disciple of another guru. It didn't matter. We both had a deep sense of attunement with each other in our love for God. So above all, seek that in your friends. Don't think of drinking companions. Those aren't friends. They're really your enemies, because they're pulling you down. And if you start talking spiritual things, they'll say, "Oh, come off it. Come have another drink." Is that a friend? A friend is somebody who can lift you spiritually. But remember, in your relations with the opposite sex, try always to pull back and understand that the real thing that you are looking for is that love inside. Because there is a natural attraction between men and women. Just accept it and don't dwell on it. Think always God is in that form. And certainly there are some people whose company you delight in, and they can be of either sex, it doesn't matter. And there are some people you really don't care that much for. I say, even to couples who are being married, I say, more even than love for each other, there should be respect. Because love can rise and fall. It can dwindle and wax again strong. It can be of many kinds. But if you think of God in that form and respect one another, respect can be unchanging. That is a much more important thing. Usually, love is of the ego. It's of desire. I love because I want. The expression in Spanish for I love you is te quiero, I want you. That's really the reality. They're just being a little more honest about it in Spanish. Have that kind of love that no matter what they do, you still respect them, and therefore in that respect, you love them. When you live that way, your life is so blessed. In fact, that blessing, I wrote this song, Blessed the Life that is given to God in all forms. I wrote this for the wedding ceremony, but it can be so in every aspect of life. Joy to you.
Blessed, blessed, the life that is given to God. Blessed, blessed, the ways where His feet have trod, all the joys that human heart can know. May His love on you bestow. May all dangers from your path remove, all delusion by His truth disproved. Blessed, blessed, the life that is given to God. Blessed, blessed, the heart open to His love. Blessed, blessed, the light that shines from above. All the wealth for which men ever schemed, all the beauty ever dreamed, all the gains for which men sigh